to our last neighbor, Frank, who lived next to us on Arlington Drive in Columbus, Georgia. I loved Frank. He used to skin deer in his backyard and ask me if I saw, because he knew I was a vegetarian, and throw legs over for my dog. That said, Frank adored me. Was always checking me out, was always flirting with me. He was about the age of my dad. And we heard that Frank, who always boasted that he was the only homeowner in the neighborhood, the first day he moved in, sat in his lawn in a lawn chair with a rifle for 3 days. And he's never been broken into once. So he said that was the way to go. Frank is from Guam and is a Chamorro, a Romanian warrior. It's referred to as warrior rather than soldier. I mean, I guess the words are used differently here and there. And so I wrote a poem about Frank. But there's always something weird. All of you writers who write about your friends and families understand that you never really know, like, are they going to like it or are they going to not like it? And I kind of still want to get a Christmas card, so I haven't been sending. This is called Chamorro Love Recipe. Frank swears there's Chamorro blood rioting in his veins. It keeps his hair dark and causes nasty heart palpitations. His backyard is full of washing machines. After the Army, he started a small handyman business, and he switches the parts out of each washer so often on slow days that he no longer knows which belt belongs to which drum. When it takes more than 2 hours to gut one washer and reconstruct another, I have to send for the police. They've come over twice in the past month to pry Frank's tools from his bloodied hands, while he hollers and pants on the floor of his shed, screaming about how no self-respecting ex-Guamanian warrior will be bested by some piece of shit tin can designed to scrub the lace off ladies' underwear. He destroys a perfectly good washing machine every time this happens. Last Friday, I brought him a turtle shell I found by the riverbed, thinking he could use it as a water bowl for his cats. But Frank said he used to wear his father's tortoiseshell belt buckle until he lost it in a flood 10 years ago. He cleared his throat and put his hands on his hips, said he would like to think of me as a daughter from then on, if I didn't mind. He wanted to cook me some island food, tapioca, or maybe some hibiscus buds baked into a pie. He glanced at my broad shoulders, my narrow feet, and told me a Chamorro's feast sticks to one's bones, keeps the eyes a pretty shade of green, and leaves the warrior swooning in a woman's yard like a flock of toads. So not all the poems are about how awesome Afghanistan is. The other poems that I brought are not war poems, actually, thankfully. I had season tickets while I was here to the Colorado Springs Philharmonic, and they played a Shostakovich piece one Sunday afternoon, and I really enjoyed the backstory talking about Shostakovich and working under oppression, and kind of trying to hide within his music what he really wanted to write, and then telling the leaders, oh no, that's not what you think it is. It's just music. It's not offensive. It's not breaking any rules. When really he was kind of trying to break rules within his music. And since there's not really a whole lot to do at a concert besides sit there and think during this, I started writing a poem. Dinner for Shostakovich. It is impractical to hate something as unassuming as a loaf of bread. The crust that cracks beneath my thumbs, the pale cloud inside. Yet I understand there are breads baked around whole, unpeeled eggs, or plots of spinach, or cranberries. From where it cools on the kitchen windowsill, it looks like nothing other than flour, water, and I eat bread every night, and it is only bread. I have told my guests when they taste the shrill of a lemon or a drunken garlic clove, they are tasting bread, and only bread. Flour, water, and yeast. And this poem is my favorite Shakespearean play is The Tempest. When I originally went to college, I was a double major in theater and English, really leaning more toward theater. I thought I wanted to be an actress. And I scored a lot of leads in plays in Seattle. My favorite was Caliban in The Tempest. He's my favorite Shakespearean character. And Bill Taylor, this wonderful Shakespearean actor who was in town for one of the performances, quoted me in his criticism that I was the sexiest Caliban. This was really fun because I had really short, spiky hair, and I lived about a quarter mile from the theater, actually, so I would just roll in dirt on my way to the theater, and I would have sticks in my hair, and dirt in my ears, and then I painted my teeth gold and gross and stuff, and it was a blast. It was awesome. But then I dropped it, so. But Caliban is still very powerful to me, the whole character of Caliban. So this is an ode to Caliban. It is the month of apples and early night. 2 pink ladies going soft in the breadbasket, and sunset lurking behind the trash cans. Itzhak Perlman is on the radio, showing us what a man can do when he no longer feels his fingers, or when he feels them intensely, down to the pulp, sleeping beneath each fingernail. A faceless animal inside of me begins to wave its arms, dance a mushroom dance. It thinks the sky has been choked with leaves. It calls for a meteor, some sunlight, anything. It knows nothing about autumn or the cosmos. It knows waking up with fruit in its mouth is good, and falling asleep on nettles is bad. It thrashes until it's told to stop. The radio plays into the morning, long after Itzhak has gone to bed somewhere in Paris or Prague, after I have put myself to bed, flailing insides and all. The radio has promised to play for years if I never touch its brass dial. I like a little bit of magic in my poems. Lately I've been thinking, until I wrote the Alcove poem, I went a couple weeks without writing because I got really frustrated with the fact that every time I wrote, it was about Tom. And don't get me wrong, I love Tom. Most of you guys here have met Tom before, the man in plaid who sets up chairs. I adore him. We have a wonderful marriage. I'm luckier than I predicted I ever would be. But I don't like my writing to fall into a rut. Just like all writers don't want their writing to fall into a rut. So I just stopped. And now I'm just kind of starting to give up, I guess, and get into it. But I wanted to bring some poems that weren't about that. And I really do like magical type of poems, something where James Tate is my favorite poet. Everything is right and real except for one very important small thing. This poem was published, I don't remember where, and that sounds wanky. They were somewhere, I was going to say where. This is called Shortly Before the World Ended. Shortly before the world ended, pain was still relevant. Drugstores sold Tylenol, aloe vera, and bug spray. They sold moleskin patches and pregnancy tests and wrapping paper and cards. It didn't seem silly, not to the customers who filled their gas tanks next door, on their way to addiction meetings, company barbecues, offices, and the gym. They prepaid bills for power they wouldn't use, and saved up vacation days, watered down the scotch, chose broccoli over bread, and slept in their clothes. They promised their children camping trips another time because another time was still relevant. They misinterpreted, as usual, the trees heaped with swooning doves, foxes trotting freely down sidewalks like dogs, dairy cows trampling barbed fences to explore other fields, ones with shallow creeks sinking through ruts in the grass. I want to end with this poem, another one that actually I've never read at a reading. I think this one is in quick draw, but I see it as kind of one of the flesh poems. It's not about war in particular. And I'm actually just noticing that all my poems tonight are very carb heavy. I didn't really notice that before I came here, but it's true, I do love bread. So this poem is called Bread. Before I read this, I deliberately tonight didn't write anything to say before my participation in the series ended, because I wanted it to be seamless. I wanted it to become Mandy's reading series, and I wanted it to stay important to this community and not necessarily to my identity. So I didn't plan anything to say to make a big deal. But I really hope that after this reading, maybe like at least like 2 hours after, or like 2 days after, like just not like 5 minutes after, right outside the door. Like I hope that a significant portion of time after the reading, you think about how thankful I am that you were here, and how important you all were to me, and how important a lot of other people who are here tonight were to me, and how much you eased my settling into a new town, which is something that I feel I do all too often. So thank you guys for being here. So that said, this is called bread. Bread of flour, spoiled by scalded yeast, bread delivered in a basket with a broken handle, bread that feeds 1,000, bread of worshipers, arm raisers, sky talkers, bread of the torn open, bread of the left outside, bread that overrises, bread that never rises, bread falling from the clouds, light as milk, tastes like honey bread, bread of cellars, bread of showers, urban bread, low-carb bread, low-calorie bread, the breadless bread, bread of my German grandmother, dense like a slab of cheese, dark as a glass of homemade beer, bread of my father's Christmas, lump of Stollen, heavy with squashed fruits, beneath a shroud of powdered sugar, bread of yesterday's school children, miracle white with crimson jelly, bread of today's school children, gluten-free, nut-free, oat-free, partially hydrogenated oil-free, trans fat-free, organic, earth-brown bread, bread of the suffering, bread of mice, bread of cockroaches, fallen behind the stove bread, bread for the ducks, and of the loaf bread, bread of communion between pigeons and the park ridden, bread of the poor, 70 cents at Walmart bread, mystery bread, eat it outside where the shopping carts are kept bread, bread of the sick, easy on the stomach bread, bread of the dying, stamped with a cross, dissolved on the sleeping tongue bread, bread crumbled in a trail over tree roots, bread vanishing in the beaks of birds, bread of prisoners, bread of soldiers, bread of travelers, hard tack, dip it in anything and it'll taste better bread, you and me bread, soft beneath the crust bread, bread that falls to pieces in your hands, bread you eat anyway, lick it off your palms, crumb by crumb, if you have to. Thank you guys.